Welcome everyone who's here to our second series of seminars for our Iscia pandemic seminar. What we thought we would do right in the beginning is do a kind of seminar which would be thinking through the pandemic together. And our previous series, the first part of the year, we spent quite a lot of time trying to understand the pandemic. I don't know if this pandemic is something very easy to, or certainly not easy to understand, and I'm not sure if we have come to much better of an understanding of it yet. But we thought, in any event, what we would like to do for the second series of seminars is to take it more internal, take it more to the question, the practical question of how do you live along with and alongside of this pandemic, since it's not some concept that we're going to understand and deal with and get rid of. We're going to have to learn to manage it and manage ourselves in relation to it. Our series of speakers, we have 10 very interesting, exciting speakers lined up for you. And in a way, that's the linking theme. It's more to do with us as a community, as a group of people who've got to learn how to do community in a kind of a different way. And so that's the kind of thing that we'll be thinking about for the next series, the next 10 seminars. So I'm not going to speak anymore. I very much want to hear from Jayshree. I'm going to allow her, or ask her actually, to introduce herself, because I want you to hear her voice. There are couple of practical things before I move or before I hand over to Jayshree. One of them is that what we will do is give her time just to kind of present to us. And then what I would like you to do, if things strike you as questions or issues that you'd like to raise towards the end of the session, won't you in the chat session and use that function that says to everybody. Those questions are also recorded in the process, and it's very nice to have them after the fact. So as you go along, think about questions that you'd like to put to Jayshree. And then one of the things that has hit our university quite hard is the passing of our Dean of Health Sciences. It's been quite a shock to everybody. There is a memorial service for him starting at 12 o'clock. So we will end this session pretty much at just before 12. We're not going to run over, just so that if there are people who want to join that online memorial service for Dean Pepeta, then we will have the chance to do that. So it's quite a sad context in which we are speaking about how to live with these kinds of things. Okay, enough from me. I'm going to mute myself and disappear, and over to Jayshree. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Andrea and Sheila, for this opportunity to present to you this morning at your seminar. Yes, I do want to take a moment to remember a wonderful man, Dean Pepeta, and be very respectful of the time and make sure that I do finish timelessly so you are able to join in with the memorial service. So my sharing this morning, just a little bit on the content. I'd like to unpack my title and why I thought about this title, and give a personal experience and my professional experience during this pandemic. And then I want to dive a little bit deeper into my approach to my patient care, my bio-psychosocial approach, touching on a little bit on the stress management strategies that I use, self-care strategies. I'm going to summarize and conclude, and then allow some questions and answers. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. So I come from a long lineage of strong women I gain my strength and my inspiration from them. Now, I do not want to minimize my male role models at all, but because we are honoring women in this Women's Month, I'm definitely going to shout about it. I am a practicing physiotherapist, as you've read in the bio, and my special interest is pain management and women's health. So my maternal and paternal grandmothers have really essentially shaped me in a lot of who I am today. Their strength and determination and the ability to survive in all adversities has really given me this Shakti I speak about, and hence my title. So Shakti, and why it has so much meaning for me. After the birth of my second daughter, which was 14 months after the first, you can imagine I was in quite a shocked state. I remember my mom coming up from Cape Town and providing me with some support for 2 weeks. On her departure, with tears streaming down my face, I asked her, "Mom, how am I going to manage?" She was very calm and very clear, and she simply said, "Don't you worry, you will have the Shakti, just have the faith." Now at that time, I really was sleep deprived, was exhausted. I didn't know what she was talking about. But in a retrospective reflection, I can truly say that I have had to really dig into the Shakti energy many, many times in my lifetime. So Shakti is really described in the feminine and often personified as the goddess, the female energy. But at a deeper level, it transcends gender, and it is rather a fundamental creative dynamism. Indian philosophy informs us of a cycle: creation, preservation, and destruction. And it is really based on ancient wisdom, which I've always been attracted to. This has given me a lot of understanding in this personification of energy when I try things into perspective. And as we know, Albert Einstein are telling us that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be changed from one form to another. So my experience during this pandemic has really forced me to challenge myself to tap into this energy, to survive both personally and professionally. I'd like to share my highs and lows during this time, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I'm going to start with the lows, and I promise I'm going to finish with the highs, because the lows were low, but the highs were really high. In this collective trauma, and with many family healthcare workers across the globe, and some even succumbing to this pandemic, we were experiencing loss and grief on a scale which was really very foreign to me. Waking up mostly to bad news and an overwhelming and excessive amount of information. I observed a well-protected wall of emotion, and I kicked into that survival mode that I often do. This came from my automatic behaviors, which has made me vulnerable and quite reactive. I had an unhealthy dose of anxiety, which really shrunk my focus as I, for no apparent reason, became quite ratty and irritable as my survivalist instinct kicked in from that encoded DNA, which was more of an impediment than a gift at this time. I became fixed in this potential threat, and I was unable to see the bigger picture. Cracks were starting to develop in my close relationships, which we often brush aside in the busyness of our day-to-day. But now, with all this time at hand and being in each other's spaces, this was becoming quite apparent. But it was not all gloom and doom, as the highs were really great. And I'd like to shed some light on some of these low aspects and how I tried to work through them. So we had this guilt-free rest and non-productivity which was imposed on us at this lockdown time. We were cooking loads of delicious meals, cleaning like never before. The garden was looking great. We were out and about, and we were really enjoying our online yoga. These were often really neglected aspects of our life. We were guaranteed these wonderful family dinners where we really had some deep sharing topics like, what if we did get the virus? What would we like to do with that, and how we would like to be treated, as well as that very difficult discussion on death. We felt deeply united, safe and comfortable. How lucky I was with all this wonderful support surrounding me. But then the questions started to come up, and they were important questions I needed to ask myself. Why do we need this imposed lockdown to validate this downtime? What message is this global phenomenon actually telling us? What is going to help us to survive and create this so-called new normal everybody's talking about? And can we accept that we don't know what the future actually holds for us? So as the energies churned inside and we needed to find our purpose, I became aware through social media and through my fellow healthcare workers from the IMA about the mask making projects. They were out in the community and addressing the needs of our communities. I immediately took out that old sewing machine, dusted it off, and tried to remember what I had learned in high school. Thanks, Andrea, for jumping on with us as well. You were a wonderful help, and your kindness was most appreciated. We were reminded of the power of this communication tool, social media, and it often gets negatively criticized, but I really embraced it, and I was happy at what we were able to achieve. It really gave us a sense of belonging, and making a difference really helped us to navigate these uncertain times. Decluttering our own home, that really reminded us of how much we had and how little we actually needed. So giving without this expectation was really a lovely feeling and a great experience at this time. I really leaned into my women's circles. I'm very blessed to have many of them. And I want to just speak about my women's health, the healthcare workers groups, which really provided a very caring and nurturing environment. We're often very good at looking after others, but often not ourselves, forgetting ourselves. And in this like-minded state, we were able to support each other and provide good feedback and highlighting our purpose in the way forward. They're great containers for the good, bad, and the ugly. Now, granted, these take time to develop, these circles. They require us to actively reach out and to nurture these and cultivate these. But my goodness, it really entrenches a sense of belonging to the community locally and globally. And it continues to support and nurture me as we go through these times. So that was my personal account, and professionally, I experienced much of the same sharing and caring. Our society, South African Society of Physiotherapy, we had persistent interaction in a good way. We had invaluable support in the form of updates and credible information, which we were able to use personally, but also impart to our patients. We were given free webinars and provided with free CPT points, and also suppliers of well-priced protective personal equipment. a caring and sharing that I am so proud to be part of, and part of this profession like never before. And I'm really grateful to that Physiotherapy Society. Our practice had to be re-looked at. We had to start to develop a new way of practicing. As you know, physiotherapy is extremely hands-on, but we redefined the way we were working. So we started seeing patients, less patients, less times a week, as they faced many medical aid challenges. I work in a private sector, and I have chosen not to be in the critical care in the hospital setup for many, many years. Non-elective surgeries were stopped, so we weren't seeing as many referrals from practicing specialists. And in our practices, we had to really embrace strict screening tools, sanitizing and cleansing procedures, which was often very exhausting, but very important to provide the safe environment for our patients. We were fortunate that the HPCSA provided us permission to launch our telehealth facilities, which then started to assist when we weren't able to do our face-to-face with our patients. And this was really a good replacement to provide patients with some kind of support during this time. My focus with patient care is from a bio-psychosocial approach, where we're really addressing the fear avoidance, anxiety, and other psychosocial aspects. And this was very valuable in supporting the patients, as I've said, especially when immediate medical care due to the restrictions of the COVID-19 was imposed. So when looking at chronic symptoms, we acknowledge the biology, so the disease activity and processes, physiological mechanisms and pathology has to be taken into account to identify where we have to assist the patient. Psychologically, we are not psychologists and we do know our limitations, but we have to acknowledge that the patient, we have to acknowledge the psychology of the patient, the feeling of helplessness, especially at this time of the pandemic, the reduced self-efficacy and the cognitive distortions which happens in this highly stressed environment. The social support structures and the socioeconomic support structures, as well as their relationships, also have to be taken into account. So there are more to symptoms than just disease and physical aspects, as we all know. Now, I promise this is not a physiology lecture. I really am just trying to put a few aspects of understanding and tools which may help us to understand the strategies that I'm going to share with you a little later. So as we know, the autonomic nervous system is a control system which largely acts unconsciously. It regulates our bodily functions, our heart rate, our digestion, our respiration, urination, sexual arousal, etc. So at this time, we can see that our sympathetic nervous system is probably quite hyper-tuned. This is the one that prepares us for fight and flight in response to a perceived or potential danger. The parasympathetic nervous system inhibits the body from overworking and restores our body to calmness. So at the moment, we are seeing a lot of this upregulated nervous system or this overactivity of the fight and flight response and the underactivity of our settling and calm response or our parasympathetic nervous system. So my opinion is we know that economic growth gives us success, but the ability to regulate our nervous system, wow, that is really powerful for success. I now want to just share a little bit on another very important word to me, and it's neuroplasticity. The fact that the brain is not fixed. It is plastic. It is strong enough to resist an occasional push, but it's pliable enough to change with repeated effort. I'd like to invite you to just do a very simple, short, practical example now. If you could just take a moment to remember a thought that was very unsettling for you. Observe what happens in your body. Give it a bit of thought as to what you did to try and forget or work through that particular thought. So the types of things that patients relate to us, what they observe in the body, can be a quickening of their heartbeat, sweating, feeling of tension, tightness in the chest, headachy, etc. Some of them tell us they forget this by eating something nice, making them feel comfortable, or there's an excessive checking of emails, a frenetic work, excessive worry, or they'll go out and shop a lot. So neuroplasticity really underpins our ability to change and stay adaptable. Who and what we surround ourselves with will affect this. Our behaviors, our interaction with our environment, and our neural processes can be altered and deleted. It is obviously a really huge topic, but I really am touching on it very briefly once again to highlight some of the strategies I'll be speaking about a little later. I build my approach to healthcare and well-being on this. It's complex, but it is gaining a lot of exposure as our need for the understanding grows. So Dr. Lisa Wimmerberg has a wonderful explanation of our reflexive behaviors, and this has really helped me as a great tool for self-understanding. So as a physiotherapist, I'm quite interested in the body and how it works, and also how it speaks to me when managing my patients. Connecting of the mind and the body is central to my approach. Static truths feel quite efficient as they are very predictable. But when we get stuck in a habit, this can translate as tension in the body. So thought patterns and rigid mental frameworks of unresolved stresses can translate as a reflex or a habit. So at this time, with all our negative bias, this is what I'm seeing most of all. Lots of tense bodies from the perceived threat and danger. Now, when we approach a patient, we may be doing a bottoms-up process where we are working with the body, but I also take the top-down approach, which incorporates all the explanations and education about the neuroplasticity, how our autonomic nervous systems are reacting, etc. So education is absolutely key. In stress management, we have to cultivate a strong awareness. This is not always easy, and self-knowledge really takes a lot of effort. But acknowledging old patterns and breaking free of them is really what is important. Our old patterns of thinking, our old patterns of doing, and our old patterns of feeling. And we have to practice these releases. It's multifactorial and very complex, but through gently delving in, we are able to work through these. My approach to patients is very interactive. It's individualized and collaborative as we work together to create a good therapeutic alliance, and the patient is very much in charge. I like teaching recognition of the body feeling mobile, when it's freezing, and when it's releasing. So once again, alluding to my cycle that I spoke about earlier, by releasing the body, we're destroying our tensions. By creating, we're creating new ways of thinking, of feeling, of doing. And then we try and sustain that until our next cycle begins. My new normal. One of the quickest ways of activating the parasympathetic or the rest and relax response is by elongating our out breath, making it slower. So I'm sure you all remember at the start of the lockdown, we were told to wash our hands and to sing happy birthday twice. Little did we know that we were activating this wonderful parasympathetic nervous system. Sighing, chanting, and singing. We're creating new sensory signals, which helps our overstimulated or shut down nervous system. It creates a feeling of safety, of pleasure. Our sensory functions are enhanced. We are able to socialize a little bit better. And I know that everybody knows this new Jerusalem song that has taken the globe by storm. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it. And you can see that it's lots of the healthcare professionals are doing these dances, and I'm sure they're deriving a lot of pleasure and feeling of safety from this and alleviating some of the stresses. When it comes to self-care, more so now than ever before, we really have to think about this. If we are strong, we can give out strong. So exercise is important, and we all know that circulation and muscle strength and release and the decrease of stress hormones happens with exercise. However, it is very important at this time to acknowledge that an overactive nervous system does not like pounding exercises, high intensity hammering type exercises, as this will just be very counterproductive for the body. So pacing, titrating the correct amount of exercise, the correct dosage at the correct time, and planning of activities are really, really important. And that's where physiotherapists can assist as well. So sometimes even just a 5-minute stretch can be much more beneficial to the body and the mind and the emotions than a 30-minute sprint. Nutrition, as we know, nutrition is important. I am not a dietitian, but I always guide patients on healthy, fresh, nutritious foods, as importance of giving the body the correct fuel, and also, especially at this time, to support our immunity most of all. And most patients who are suffering are usually resorting to the incorrect nutrition. Sleep is often underestimated and minimized. But this is the time we restore and replenish. So I always ask about the quality of sleep, the length of time they sleep, and just to make sure and bring attention back to the importance of that. I've alluded to the social connectivity before in my women's circles, etc. But just to again remember that it deepens our personal understanding and care of each other. Spiritual connection, there are many interpretations, but for me, it's a deep core understanding of myself, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And here I'd like to talk a little bit about mindfulness, the importance of mindfulness practice, being really engaged in the moment, in the present moment, without distraction, without judgment. Now, I know I'm one of those that has great difficulty in calming my monkey mind. It's always full of stuff. And so sitting and meditating really doesn't work that well for me. But I do know that if I mindfully walk outside, thinking about every step, taking in the environment and engaging in the senses, can be just as beneficial for me. I also like to refer patients to body scans, mindfulness practice. There are many, many on the internet. And there are many programs like the Mindful Stress Reduction programs, which is locally run here by Dr. Margot de Kooker as well, which are really helpful as good strategies. And like muscles, we have to exercise and strengthen them. Similarly, if we don't strengthen this, we also lose the strength of this connectivity. So in summary, we are challenged to wake up and bring to our awareness to these impediments. We've really got to show up and believe that we have something to offer in our individual capacity, be it small or be it large. Believing that setbacks are just contributors to the process of life, and this time especially is a wonderful opportunity for reintegration, for reinvention. Being present fills our inner landscapes. Knowing that some inspirations can be outdated, but they really crack open our creativity and remind us to remain current. Listening to our heart, our body, and our mental signals can be a powerful portal to dive deeper in for transformation. My parting thoughts this morning is to reflect on this creativity, preservation, and destruction cycle. Remind ourselves of the value of our interconnectedness, having compassion for each other, to live cooperatively and be cooperative, and as a unity, as united, we can forge through these challenging times like this pandemic and all other challenges that comes along with it. I thank you so much for this opportunity to share my thoughts. I want to thank my technology team, my family, for bringing me up to date to the present time. And once again, Andrea and Hashila for putting my name forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Jayshree. That was fascinating and far too short in the sense that we could, well, I felt like I could listen to you all day. So thanks very, very much for that very kind of rich, stimulating. I identified with so many of the things that you were saying, but I don't want to sort of hold the space here. So what I'd very much like to do is to hear from all of you out there. It's I mean, I see a list of names on a screen, but it's Yeah, I'd very much like to hear from you. So maybe if you could, if you want to ask Jayshree a question or chat to her or offer a comment, maybe just, I think, raise your hand or put your video on. Maybe that would work. You can, quite sure how to do this. Yeah, perhaps just raise your hand and then we will open your video on and then you can chat. And I'm not sure if I can see everybody. I'm going to have to scroll up and down a bit. Yes, okay. Okay, so I'm not seeing hands here yet. So while you think about figuring out how to, I don't actually know how to raise your hand in this thing. I think actually just put your video on. That would be the easiest for me to see. But in the meantime, what I would like to chat to you about or ask you a little bit of a question. It's so it's basically personal experience. I'm absolutely with you that right at the beginning of this lockdown, I was absolutely frantic about exercise and I did all this pounding exercisey stuff and I damaged my back and damaged my ankle and ended up for a couple of months just having to stop doing any of that and then doing very slow rehab exercise. But what I found interesting is that the online space is useful for people who are kind of fairly robust anyway and can follow along and know how to do these things right. Whereas for me, I went to a physio as well, and she said to me, okay, well, do this particular exercise. And I went down and did it. And she said, oh, stop, you can't do it like that. So you really did need that hands-on thing. So I was wondering about your kind of therapy. I know it's something you have to do, but do you find that it really works?
Thanks, Andrea. Yes, I completely understand when you say that we know exercise is good for us and that we have to do it. None of us can be not doing it. But I think going back to what we mentioned before about our overactivated nervous system at the moment, particularly, and that our sympathetic nervous system is just firing away because we are bombarded externally with so much information. So I think we have to acknowledge that we are whole and that our mental thoughts translate into our body. And for that purpose, I think it's very important to really acknowledge that there are certain times where we can push our bodies, but there are certain times where we have to hold back. And that is really, really important because we need our bodies and our minds to catch up with each other in a way that we can harmonize them both. So sometimes, and that's where I've been fortunate to do postgrad studies in pain management, which was a very comprehensive series, and I had a special interest in chronic pain management, where we were really taught about the SMART program, where you have specific, measurable, achievable and time-sensitive activities, which alludes to the activity planning as well as pacing of activities based on the symptoms that are presenting. So it's very, again, collaboratively done with the patient, where we may even say, let's do 5 minutes of walking 5 times a week, and slowly gauge. So then I'm referring mainly to symptoms like pain and stiffness and so on. And then slowly, without making the brain experience this threat to itself, to the body, because that's what the brain is experiencing. When it's being pounded, the brain is experiencing a potential threat of damage. Whether we damage or not, it is the experience and the perception of the brain that this is not something I'm enjoying. And then the symptoms will translate into the body. So at a certain time, when we are experiencing symptoms, we have to really titrate that dose quite carefully in order to keep that brain happy. Oh, so it's that amount is going to render a good result. Okay, now let's see if we can up that a little bit. And so it's a very careful process that we take. Then your second part of your question about telehealth, I was fortunate to have one or two in Johannesburg and one or two in Durban. And as much as it was challenging in a way that I'm very tactile, and of course physiotherapy is a very hands-on profession, I really lean to my chronic pain management strategies that I had done. And in working in educating patients on understanding pain, understanding this neuroplasticity, understanding how the nervous system works, and allowing that threat value to be decreased, helped patients immensely. Firstly, in understanding why their body was responding in the way that it was, but also how to read certain bodily experiences that they were having. And in so doing, we also had videos set up where I had demonstrated exercises. They were able to demonstrate back to me. And so we had corrective measures via the Zoom and WhatsApp videoing. And we were helped by our professional boards to endorse this. Because we also have to remember patient confidentiality, etc. So there were new versions of Zooms and things that were incorporated in this. So telehealth was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. It was wonderful in seeing how patients transform themselves through their self-care. So sorry, Andrea, that was a very long answer to your question, but that was more or less my approach.
It's a fabulous answer, because I think that I am the textbook example of the wisdom of what you're saying. First of all, the bad example of going mad at the beginning and damaging myself, and then learning through 6 months of, well, quite a lot of pain, first of all, and then through bit more education, learning how to actually rather stretch and relax instead of pounding myself. And I think, so yes, you could use me as a textbook case.
We live and learn every day.
Oh, I wish we would learn and stay, actually, keep the learning and keep holding on to the learning. Yeah, so that's something I think is also really, for me, fascinating. I feel like I'm sort of dominating your time, but if there is somebody who would like to come in, please do. I see a whole lot of people on the list here, but no hands or videos. So I'm going to invite somebody to Glenn. Hi. You need to unmute yourself, Glenn. There you go.
Thanks so much for the lovely presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I'm very interested in this Shakti energy that you spoke about. And perhaps why it's more so considered feminine, and how we as men can cultivate this Shakti energy, and what you think particularly the benefits for men might be as opposed to women. I know you cannot speak from the advantage point of a man, but I think that because it's positioned as a feminine energy, men might just be resistant to it, whereas I'm very open to it and want to learn more about it. So I put that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. I love the question. I think in my first slide, I alluded to, I'll go back to it very quickly, that it actually transcends gender. So we're definitely not leaving you out, Glenn. It's just a personification of energy. And it really does transcend gender. I think for me personally, what Shakti means to me is as a woman, I guess I really am drawn to this whole personification as a goddess. And in fact, traditionally we have 9 days allocated to acknowledging this female energy, as we call it. So according to my understanding and the way I appreciate it, is that it's a female aspect of God or a higher power, and that we are not minimizing the male aspects at all, but rather to acknowledge the female aspects and just bring it to our awareness. So in those 9 days, it's a wonderful opportunity for us just to acknowledge those aspects that we all have within us, even you, Glenn.
Thank you.
So could you maybe explain a little more about what is specially female? So, I mean, what would Glenn have to, for instance, kind of put his mind onto to kind of recognize the female in him? If that makes sense.
That's a very good one. You know, I have a husband who has so many wonderful female qualities. He's nurturing, he's kind, he's strong, but he can be gentle and so on. And people have said this is female, but I recognize that in him. And so I truly believe that aspects of the feminine, nurturing, motherly instincts that we speak about, and all those things, anybody can have them. I just feel as a woman, I'm able to understand it from my perspective, but I truly believe that, you know, I'm gender sensitive and that I see these aspects are available to all of us to tap into it.
It's a radio.
Yes, Daddy, take the radio.
We're hearing a conversation. Probably, if I can.
I think it's Adi.
Is it Adi? Adi, we're hearing you from Nigeria. Do you want to chat to us? I think we're hearing your kitties. Can we see you?
Oh, sorry about that. I didn't know I've been unmuted. Yeah, well, I've been listening in, and then I can relate with many of the points she has made in this wonderful presentation. You know, at the beginning of the lockdown, I didn't want to admit to myself that the uncertainty was really getting to me, and so I wanted to just brave it out. But at some point, I realized I needed to strike a balance between work, exercise, and a few other things that were happening around me, being confined to this little space, and then wondering what could happen to me, the family, my parents, especially my dad, who's already in his 70s and all. So I think that it took time, but eventually I realized that just finding a healthy balance between all these different aspects of one's life, these different facets, it can be a great source of strength. Yeah, the anxiety has not really disappeared, and it gets worse. Sometimes it gets aggravated sometimes when you have flu, for instance, or you start coughing, and then you begin to ask yourself, what's happening to me, and all of those things. Well, I think she speaks to me in a very great way, and I think that I've just been able to validate some of those things I think I've tried in wading through this particularly challenging period.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, man. So balance, maybe that's part of the feminine thing. Jayshree, there's a quick one more question because I think we're going to start running short of time. But this is from Robin on chat. And one of the things, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, but I'll just read it to you. Robin says, many of these qualities are socially constructed. So I'm imagining the so-called feminine qualities. Males are capable of these qualities. We just name them as feminine or masculine. but we all generally express ourselves along the spectrum from feminine to masculine. We're not always either or. So I think that's, in a certain sense, maybe a part of what you're saying with your image of the two together, but yeah, I'm not going to respond to that. How would you think in relation to that?
Yes, I totally agree. You know, when I initially gave my title, I knew it was going to create some conversation around why female energy. And I remember phoning Sheila and telling her, Sheila, don't put female energy, put powerful energy. You know, we all have any aspect. It's just what predominates in you and what you are able to bring out into the world. We have named it female and male, but basically it's really for our understanding. That's how I see it. That's my perception. Our understanding and who you are. We can be, males can be the best nurturers. Doesn't mean that it's only a female quality. So I think that's, I'll leave it at that, where I'll come back to what I've said, that it really transcends gender. It really does. But for me, the word Shakti has just been something that I've carried with me. And I know it's described as the feminine in our texts and things like that, but I see it bigger than that.
Okay. Sheila is indicating that we have 5 more minutes. So if there is one quick other question, you can just quickly stick it onto chat. I see Glenn is saying that he likes thinking of it as power. I have to say I like the idea that there might well be very special qualities that are feminine and very special qualities that are masculine. I like the division, and I think it makes sense. I'm not as sort of, I don't know what to call it, gender fluid or whatever, and I don't think that there's necessarily not a distinction between the two. I'd like to think of the distinction and you know, value them equally, but they are different. So that's a different way of thinking about it. I'm just throwing it in there because I think there's something quite special about women, and I'd like to, you know, unpack what that is. Okay, but maybe we should, since there doesn't seem to be hands raised at the moment, maybe Jayshree, we should just let you finish, give us a final word or two, and then we will close off in about 3 minutes or so.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think moving forward, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't get his name, the gentleman from Nigeria.
Adi.
As Adi says, you know, we all experience these feelings of tremendous challenge and way to, and the unknown has really been a scary process. But I think by embracing, you know, singing, dancing, interconnectedness, remembering to be light as well. It feels very heavy, but remembering the lightness of being is the way forward. And whichever way we choose to do that, and whoever we choose to do that with, that is obviously personal choice. But just to remember, and also grounding ourselves, remembering that nature is extremely grounding. So when the heaviness is engulfing us, to remember that a simple outdoor walk or something like that can be very grounding and very nurturing to our souls. So I think my parting words is sing, dance, have fun, be merry, and have your moments of deep introspection and thought, but let's be gentle and light about it as we move forward with a renewed positivity, and remember that our cycle continues to give us new beginnings and new things to look forward to. So thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. I'm learning, and tomorrow I'm going to sing and dance my way to my outdoor place, and I'm going to go plant tree. And while I do that, I'm going to sing and dance.
Well, it's going to help your parasympathetic nervous system so much, Andrea. It's going to
Fabulous.
help you and keep you rested and calm.
Fabulous. I'm going to use my cell phone and take a video, and I will put it on Facebook to show you the social media.
Please do that. We've had
so
to
much. Yeah.
this virtual platform. How powerful is it not? I am so privileged to be a part of it.
Thanks so much. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I see all the thank yous coming onto our chat session. So yes, let's end off. What I like doing to end off is just to kind of have a brief glance at everybody's faces. So if you want to just turn on your videos, say goodbye, and then we'll end. There's ID. Hi, there's Faye. Hi and bye. And we need to put this in a view that I can see everyone. Hi, Ethan. Okay, let's, hi, Raina. Hello, you look familiar. Okay, we actually do need to end now. We don't want to run over. Thank you again so much. And yes, we will see you all next week. Or I can't remember what we're doing next week, but in any case.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jayshree.
Yeah. Thanks, Jayshree, very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.